one more story
Sure.
maybe about the Kennedy. Well, I can
Yeah.
tell you a couple
Yeah.
of them, but I will tell this one. I had to go to a luncheon for my office. I was appointed to go as the representative, and Bobby Kennedy was the guest speaker. And he was, it was a round table, and I'm sitting there, and he was so cute. But, you know, his tie was like this, and all that hair, you know, very unkempt looking. And he gave his speech, and when he came down, he sat next to me.
Oh, really?
And he started talking to me and asked me what my name was, and do you think I could think of what my name was? You know, I'm married. My name is Loretta Truck, but I was thinking, what's my name? You know, and I say Loretta Taylor. And I could not talk. I could not speak. He'd ask me a question after question, and it wouldn't come out of my mouth. But he was adorable.
Oh, wow. Shirley, you have a story for us.
The one I'm most proud of. When I was young, very young, 15, 16 years old, I had a child. Then later on I got married, I had another child. And then I said, well, I got to get my GED, diploma or something, because I can't go like this. But then anyway, me and my husband broke up, and I started getting a welfare check, and I said $100 a month for 2 kids and living in public housing. So I went back to night school. And I went for 4 years, but I got my GED, got me a job, raised my 2 kids, got me a house, got a job, and working for the Department of, well, patent and trademark first, the government. So I got my house and everything worked out okay. And my kids went to school, they got them a good job, so it ended up good.
That's great. It is something to be proud of. Let's get any other stories. How about first jobs? Anybody remember what you did for a first job?
I do.
Yeah, what'd you do, Donna?
Tassels on corn. Pulled with tassels on the corn
Wow.
and got 50 cents an hour
Wow. And where was that?
in Minnesota.
Wow.
That was my first job.
Yeah. How about other things about Alexandria from years ago? Anybody been here for a long time? You were born here, so. What was it like growing up in Alexandria? Was it as big as it is now? What was the kind of the difference?
Alexander was a country town back in the 30s. At our house, we lived right there on Henry Street, in the 1100 block. You had the Elks Home across the street. You had the American Legion. You had the Chevrolet place right there on the corner of King and Henry. You had a huge car that used to sit up there. You remember that? The Chevrolet place up there. And it was the Chevrolet for years. The railroad, the train rode right down Henry Street, which is Route 1 going south. It was two-way. It was a two-way street. And naturally, it was Jim Crow. We could not, we didn't have locks per se, what people have now. We had a lock on the door like a skeleton. You could go to the hardware store on the corner, right across from the Chevrolet place, get a skeleton key. We didn't actually lock our doors, but anybody could buy a key and come in.
Yeah.
And we had no electricity, but we did have an indoor toilet. And the toilet was at the back of our kitchen. I don't know if anybody can remember the kind of toilet. You sit on the seat and the water run. That's what we had. And so with no electricity, we didn't have fans and things.
Oh, sure.
TV was not invented during that time.
Yeah.
TV didn't come until the very late 40s. But we had the great big old Philco radio.
Ah.
And we had, they called the kerosene lamps.
Yeah.
That's what we did homework by.
What did you listen to on the radio?
Philip McGee and Molly, the Lone Ranger, all of these things, yeah. We listened to all of that, and we did our homework by lamplight. We had coal stove. We didn't realize we were poor. We had a couple of roosters in the backyard. We had a goat in the backyard.
Wow.
Yeah, we did. We was called Billy Goat, and we had the great big tubs because we had coal stove. And we washed outside in the summer when you could hang your clothes out.
Yep.
You could build a fire and boil stuff with for the lye soap.
Oh, wow.
Clothes be just as pretty on the line.
Rubberwood.
Had a scrub board.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and everybody knew everybody.
And you boil your starch. Did y'all boil
Yeah,
your starch?
blue starch.
Argo starch.
All those starch.
Pants would stand up by themselves.
And you also had the big screen, it was the thing you could put your curtains on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you, well, you probably don't know. But you stretch your curtain on this thing. It's like a huge frame and it had these little tacks.
Huh.
And once your curtain dried, you didn't have to iron your curtains.
Nope.
Wow.
They stand straight up.
Wow.
And but you ironed everything. And my mother used
No
to
permanent
make
press
things.
back then.
Oh, no.
Yeah, yeah.
Everything was ironed, because some of our slips and dresses, you could, after that argo starch, you could just sit them there and they stay straight up.
And you sprinkle your clothes and put them
Oh,
in the
yeah.
refrigerator.
You sprinkle your clothes.
What? You put your
Yes,
clothes in the
in the
refrigerator?
That kept it damp,
So that
all
they
that you
can
didn't
dampen
get
all
a
the way
chance.
And then when you iron them, they'd be nice
Yeah.
and crispy. Your collar was set up.
Oh, my
I started
goodness.
that at 6 years old. But my experience in Alexandria was with my grandmother. She took me to what they call Spring Garden now, which
Yeah.
was Gump Springs back in the day. And she was some part of George Washington's slave colony part. And she took us down there and they had huts. They didn't have houses like we got now.
No, they had
one-room
shanties.
shanties
Oh,
or
excuse me.
whatever, shacks.
I talked in my head.
How you pronounce the shanties?
Yeah, shanties.
Okay, she took me down there, I think I was like 9, and she showed me how they live, and they had one big well in the middle where everybody would go get their water. And in the shanties, they would have, it was one room. It was really one room, but when they got through dividing it up, the people that lived there, they had a bedroom on this side, and then they had a kitchen, table and chairs over here. They had hot plates, to cook on. And she also brought me up here on Cameron Street, where they used to, I think it was trade slaves or something. Something she was telling me how the people would come in and on a boat down at the river at the Potomac.
Okay.
And then they would bring them up here and they would bid on them. And each person, that brought their people would take them to clean their houses or, do the work that they were supposed to do. And she lived to be 102. She died in 1966.
Wow.
And her last daughter that lived on Royal Street, she was the last one on Royal Street, the last black person on Royal Street in the 400 block, died a year ago, and she was 100. My mother lived to be 98. And it was 12 of them, and all of them lived to be in their 70s and 80s, back then. But she used to tell me different stories of how, people you had to go to people's houses and clean, but they raised those people's children. A lot of people didn't raise their children back then. They would give them to the maid or the housekeeper, the nanny. And they would raise them, and most of them would call her Miss Young. Mama Young, instead of Miss Young. And I don't know, it was just fascinating how Alexandria has come a long ways, especially Richmond Highway, because they said afterward, all of Gum Spring was owned by a black man called Joe King's Bottom. And then they turned it over to another, I don't know the last man that owned it, but it was a black man that after they cleaned up Gum Spring, not Gum Spring, down in the bottom or whatever they call it.
You talking about where the
Across from Walmart.
Okay, that used to be Ferris Holland lived down there.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember.
No.
Ferris Holland was a school teacher, a science teacher that taught at Parker Gray. He had a great big house, and in his basement, he had fixed it so teenagers, I was a teenager then, we go down there, we were junior police. And when you saw somebody, because then you were sort of familiar with the Fairfax police, they come down, we had a jukebox, you put a nickel in the
Yeah,
jukebox. I mean, it was a place you could hang out, talk,
Sure.
dance. No soon school was out, I got on the bus, go down there. Because then they had that open air theater across
Yeah,
the
across the
street.
street, right across the street,
Yeah.
right.
And it was Jim Crow, so there was a pathway. And that's where
Explain
we
that
went.
word to me, I've heard it a lot of times.
Jim Crow is for when it was for whites only.
I didn't want to put it that way, but
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
Blacks were not
So
allowed,
this
and you
area
drove
was like
in.
that too, because we could not come out here.
Alexander was
Yeah,
that
we
way.
could not come out,
Okay.
we could not come past Rose Hill.
Or we could go anywhere, but certain times of night was places you did not
Right,
go.
you did not go.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about race relations over the years here?
You know,
Yeah.
not to interrupt you, but when we first moved down here, Delray was that way.
Yes,
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. Del Rey was that way.
blacks came to
Yeah.
work in Delray.
Yeah.
Or
But you wasn't
unless
allowed
you
to be
were-
out here after a certain hour.
Yeah, unless you were living with the people you
Right.
were
Yeah.
working with.
Right.
So am I getting this right? So blacks could work here in
You
Delray,
couldn't live in
but after
Delray.
evening, they weren't allowed to be in the area
Weren't
any longer.
allowed Unless you lived with the people that you worked for.
Sure, yeah.
But you didn't go shopping and all of this sort of stuff.
It was bad in those days.
Because I used to
My
work.
mother worked at the Pentagon, and we lived in DC at the time, and she had to transfer twice to get to the Pentagon. She was always so embarrassed because we're from Pennsylvania, so we didn't know the struggles of the blacks. But she had to, when she crossed the river into Virginia, they made all the blacks go to the back of the bus.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yes.
my mother was
Yes.
so embarrassed.
But you
She
know,
was sick about that.
J.C. Penney, I mean, the dime store on King Street.
Yeah, that was Murphy's.
Murphy's they had that sign up there. It was blacks on this side and whites on that side, bathroom, as far as
Oh,
bathroom
yeah.
was concerned. I never understood.
And that was that was
In
on the
back.
side by
Yeah.
Washington
Washington
Street.
Street, right.
Were
That's where
there,
they had that.
were there a lot of activists here to help with the civil rights movement?
Yes, I think so, during the civil rights, but before that. Like when with the libraries. The black had the one little
One
small
library.
library.
Yeah.
And it's a church now, but that's where the library
It used to be,
was.
yeah.
Yes.
I think it was it Mr., I can't think of the man's name. He started going there, they live on St. Asa Street now. But, I can't think of his name, but he started the movement to get us into the
Oh,
library.
you're talking about the lawyer?
Yes.
Samuel,
What's his name?
I can't think
My
of his name.
memory's bad.
Well, it's a wonderful book out that they have about that
Yeah.
whole history of that.
Oh, yes, see, but we were living here at that time,
Yeah,
during
but I
that
tell
time.
y'all, it's a book out, even a calendar or something. I have the calendar where they had,
Yep.
these different things that happened.
I think we should give one of our former pastors, Pastor Carl Byer, and during the integration period in Alexandria, you know, there was turmoil. And he used to go to all the meetings, to the schools, the churches, and he was really a pacifier. And he did a lot to bring people together. So he was minister here for 32 years, I think.
And you know, what really got me when I started daycare, I had to go down to City Hall to get a license. Okay. You could have knocked me off the chair when I read the stipulations. The development that I live in now was not to be rented or sold to blacks. But it
Yeah.
wasn't that word, it was N-word. And I had to call one of the clerks over to look at this because I'm like, is this for real? Is this really on a document down here? And that's the man that owned that whole development, that street.
Because you said on Manning Street,
Yes,
don't you?
he owned, it's called Waverly Development back then. He owned that whole little section right there. And he did not want any blacks in his houses. We did not be able to buy those houses until after he had died and his children started selling the houses, you know, off. But, I mean, I couldn't believe that it was on, I mean, some of the stuff that you go down to City Hall and look in those documents, it's amazing.
Oh, I know way back.
It's amazing.
It was the same thing in the Pentagon, in the government office. They wouldn't hire blacks. And they chose me, and I was furious about it, and I was the EO, that was my little extra job,
They don't sell
EO
it. Yeah.
counselor, and I would have to fight for them. And in my office, I hired the first black secretary, my secretary was black.
Well,